Particularly as you see CTV accelerate, it's becoming increasingly cumbersome for buyers to be able to execute on a plan that reaches their audience nationally. A couple of years ago when we started looking across the unsolved needs in the video ecosystem, what we thought the biggest unsolved need was interoperability. I think right now, trying to buy, particularly and we're super excited about the acceleration of CTV, but it's becoming increasingly cumbersome for buyers to be able to execute on a plan that reaches their audience nationally without going to many, many different places to try and execute on that buy. Right? You start thinking about a national campaign, national footprint. And we set out to do at Beachfront was to automate that process, drive interoperability between any CTV supply and any video supply for a programmer that sits either in a set-top box or in a linear ecosystem. And that's kind of what we continue to think that's one of the biggest challenges and also one of the biggest opportunities for the industry is to have true interoperability between your streaming supply and your linear supply. I don't think demand is the biggest problem that they have. Certainly in CTV, there's no lack of demand for that for high quality premium supply, right? But I do think as you look at the TV ecosystem in general, listen, 4 years from now, you're still going to have 60 plus million pay TV subscribers, right? And the process with which you buy and sell that supply is still completely manual. So you have this issue of perishability because it takes days or weeks to actually execute a buy across that ecosystem. And when I start thinking about TV, from every viewing endpoint, not just streaming, but also, via a pay TV subscription or a linear transmission, there's a ton of supply that just goes unfulfilled, or it gets aggregated and resold at really inefficient rates. And I would argue that the demand density that we have in programmatic channels, because we open up that supply to tens of thousands of brands, if not millions of brands, right, doesn't exist in pay TV. So I don't know that it's necessarily a demand problem plaguing the ecosystem overall, but I do think by driving interoperability, we're going to enable more brands to be able to buy TV, and we're going to be able to enable programmers to be able to benefit from the kind of demand density that having access to, tens of thousands or millions of brands would drive. What we're helping MVPDs, distributors, programmers to do is try and make all of their supply transactable on an impression basis, right? So, that is ultimately the mission that we set out on 2 years ago. As you're aware, we're now, at scale in VOD. We have the ability to reach over 40 million households in VOD, and we're starting to scale meaningfully our global footprint in linear. It's all about driving, a common, I wouldn't call it currency, but a common way of looking at that supply. And we think impression-based is the first step in doing that. Enabling that kind of buying methodology is step one. Step two, I think, is addressability. And then how do we start applying the same rich audience data we have in CTV across non-streaming, video endpoints like traditional television? And I think that footprint in addressability will grow in traditional TV over time.